Come on, give him a big hand. That's my protege. That's my mentee.
I'm sure you can do better than that.
Hey, hey.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. What a privilege and a pleasure for me to be in this house and be given an opportunity to address the summit this year. I never came to the summit to address no one. I always come to be addressed.
Yes, amen.
But how many know that when the Father has spoken, he has spoken? A lady came to me while I was seated there, and she was congratulating me for a powerful message I preached last night. And I didn't say much. I just said, thank you. And my thank you, my thank you was a thank you of faith that I'm going to teach well. Right now, I'm in my boom zone.
They think we all look alike, Charlie.
Exactly. I come across that in my country all the time. You know, actually, in my country, they say, you know, white people can't see a difference between, you know, people who are black. You know, they always confuse you for the other one. So, welcome the other one. Well, my wife is here with me this year, and Charlie Masala. That's my wife. She, you know, people have been coming to me and saying, oh, your wife is beautiful, your wife is beautiful. And I'm thinking, I'm not a damn man.
Charlie, I'm proud of you. Say it again.
I'm sure. I'm sure they did. People are coming to me all the time here at the conference, and they say that my wife is beautiful. And I'm saying, of course. I'm not a dumb man. I'm not a stupid man. She's the product of my intelligent choice. You know, I always get tempted to believe and think that, you know, for God to create, when God created my wife, he must have been in a good mood. She is a professional. She has worked in the highest office in the land in the presidency, and she's a powerful events planner and coordinator, and she is an agent. She's an agent for speakers and entertainers and politicians and so forth. So whoever you're looking for to come and speak at your event, you know, whether it's in business or it's in government, she has that database. So I am very honored, Dr. Monroe, for the opportunity to be able to speak, and in absentia, Mama Ruth. An elegant, distinguished lady and her husband were going for a camp holiday. The lady decided to write a letter to a campground owner to inquire about the facilities. She specifically wanted to know about the toilet facilities. But as she wrote, she looked at it and deliberated with the husband and felt that she didn't want to use the word toilet. She felt that it was a bit crude. She decided to use an old English word called bathroom commode. And she also, when she read it, she felt, you know, bathroom commode is still long and is still not, you know, she was embarrassed to use this word. And she felt she didn't want to use it. So she decided, after long deliberations, that she's going to abbreviate bathroom commode and just use the word, the abbreviation BC. So she wrote a letter and said, I would like to know if the campground has a BC. When the camp owner read the letter, the camp owner couldn't understand, and after much deliberations with his staff, he determined and established that the abbreviation BC stood for Baptist Church. With that thought in mind, listen to the answer from the camp owner. Dear Madam, we regret a delay in answering your letter. We now take pleasure in informing you that a BC is located 9 miles north of the campground. It is capable of seating 250 at a time. I admit that that is a distance away, more especially if you're in a habit of going regularly. But you will be pleased to know that a great number of people take their lunches along and make a day of it. They usually arrive early and stay late. The last time my wife and I were there was 6 years ago. It was so crowded that we have to stand the whole time we were there. I like to say that it pains me very much not to be able to go more often. But it's surely no lack of desire on my part. It seems as you grow older, it is more of an effort, particularly in cold weather. If you decide to come to the campground, perhaps I could go with you and sit with you and introduce you to all the friendly folks. Sincerely. When you deal with diversity, it is important that you have the same definition of terms with the environment that you're working with. This particular session is a challenge for me because I live in a diverse country. Much of what apartheid was about, I have experienced personally. And this is what makes this particular session very practical, because I can actually just give you my testimony and go and sit down. It will be a session. However, for the purposes of being in check and of being relevant, my topic this morning is the leadership key of unifying diversity. It's session 14. It was supposed to be yesterday, but it was postponed to be today. How many know that I was struggling with the pregnancy all night? For those of you who are wondering why I didn't speak yesterday and I'm speaking today, I've got a verse. I've got a verse for you. It says, many are the plans in the man's heart, but it's the Lord's purpose that prevails. Here are some of the greetings that I would like to give you when we start. We wanted to come, but Daddy and Mommy said next time. Yeah. This is a greeting from our two babies. Before I met Dr. Miles Monroe, I used to live in a village. I was raised in a village. We didn't speak English at all. We spoke Venda. And we live in huts. We used to live in a hut. My mother used to make fire in the middle of the hut. This was an upgrade. What you see there is an upgrade. At least we have 3 huts. Initially, we used to have 1. My mother would make fire in the middle of the hut. And the one side was where she kept her kitchen, the pots and kitchen utensils, pots and plates and so forth. And she used to make fire in the middle to cook. And one side was where we kept the goats, because we had goats. You know goats? Okay. And the other side was our bedroom in the same hut. That's my history. Growing there, I did not even know that there were white people until I was a bigger age. Why? Because we didn't live with, there was no, I didn't know Indians. I didn't know white people. I always saw those in books, and I wondered if they existed. But as I was growing up, I got programmed to think certain things about people who don't look like me. South Africa is a very forgiving nation. As you know, our former president, Nelson Mandela, has demonstrated that to the world. I lived in these huts, ignorant as I was. But how many know that when God, if God exposes you to something, actually God won't expose you to something that He doesn't want you to have. That is why now we have moved from that hut. So I just put that home so that those of you who are from America and who ask me all the time whether you stay with lions, that we have houses. The impact of globalization has left no stone unturned. Back in the village where I lived, I was surprised some 3 months ago when I went there. I saw something that I haven't seen in our village. Chinese people live in my village. Now, there are Indian people who live in the village. I'm sure that the Chinese are up to something. But that's not the big point. The point is, the point is, why are they there? But for my presentation this morning, the point is, we live in a moment in time where there are no boundaries. People are going everywhere. I saw an Indian guy in a taxi in my village. They're starting to learn the language. And I'm sure it's because we are also a good market. But we do not have what we have just taught earlier on, called innovative thinking. By the way, I enjoy teaching after you have taught. And I'm not intimidated like the other ones who say, hey, it's difficult to do it. No, for me, I can do it. I can handle it. You know why? Because when I come here by myself, all I have is credibility. But when I come here because He brought me in, I have credible credibility. There's no better place than being in a place where you know that you are under authority. You got to realize that we live in a global, environment. You are not on your own. You are with other people who don't look like you. In your organization where you work, you also are impacted by diverse people, even in your own family. So diversity is with us whether we like it or not, or whether we prefer it or not. We live with diversity. Even when you live with your own brothers and sisters, you're still diverse. My country has about 49.1 million people. And we are diverse. It takes a lot of good and great attitude to live in South Africa when you are in the corporate environment, because that's where we all meet. And for you to be able to be successful, you got to understand that if you are to do business, whether it's in China or in India, or you want to do business from Africa to in the US, or you're coming from the US doing business in Africa, it is important that you understand the dynamics, the cultural dynamics, and the diversity which exist in those countries. Because you won't be able to be effective if you can't manage diversity. Our country made it a must for organizations to train on diversity. Why? Because all of a sudden in 1994, we have everybody now, coming together. They have to work together even if the other ones don't like. Because it was legislated. And it's legislated for us to do that. But how many know, as Dr. Miles Monroe says, you cannot legislate love and acceptance. By the way, if I throw some of Dr. Monroe's statements, don't take it too personal. There's nothing wrong in being a copycat, as long as you copy the right cat. And this is the right cat. This picture that you see on the board, it's called a pointless painting. In other words, the painter didn't use a normal, what we call quas brush. He used a pointless. It's kind of a knife. It paints in dots. If you had a magnifying glass, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. And what I learned from this is that unity requires diversity. We are not able to talk about unity if we do not have the diversity. And unity is not uniformity. We don't have to look alike for us to accept each other. And I also don't have to feel sorry that I was black, because I'm perfect for my purpose. Have you thought of it that you wouldn't be alive if you were not what you are? Ronnie, you wouldn't be alive if you were not a white man born in Israel. So everything that you are, you're perfect for your purpose. So because I say this because most of the times we feel that we are inadequate and we feel that we should be something else. And that is why when I met Dr. Miles Monroe, I was very encouraged, because I haven't met a black man who made so much sense. And when I looked, he was speaking in white churches in my country, and telling them where to get off at the time, because we were going through transition. And I'm thinking, my God, what a manner of man is this? So we require all these different dots with different colors to be able to have a nice painting that you see. If that painting was all black dots, or all white dots, or all pink dots, it wouldn't look the way it looks. It wouldn't be a picture. Look on the board. There is a lot of talk. People talk and they say, when you meet a black person or a white person, they say, you know what, I'm not racist. 99% of the time they are. Because you don't have to say what you are. You just leave it and we see it. So even if they are dressed, they are still bulls. As you run your own organization, you will realize that there is a tripartite alliance or relationship that is important for you to take care of. Every company requires employees to be able to service the customer. So the company will always, give what we call a brand promise. Or we call it the talk. They go and talk about what they will deliver. But how many know that a company don't have hands? They can't deliver nothing. But they do it through the people who are to walk the talk. That is the brand experience to the customer. But as you know, employees are not the same. They're still diverse. How do we manage that? How do we manage the diversity? How do I make sure that as a black person working with Indian people and white people, that I don't give preference just to the people who look like me? That's the challenge, diversity challenge that you have as an entrepreneur or as an owner of a business. And of course, your next challenge is that the customer that you're dealing with and or supplying service to, also it's diverse. You got to understand the DNA of your customer and what makes them tick. In South Africa, we have what we call buy a black or rent a black. That is when white people who can't get business they usually just get someone who can sometimes not even read or write, put them in the board and pay them peanuts and report to the government that we have got so many black people. What do you call in America? Rent a black? Buy a black? Token. When you use tokens in your organization just to achieve diversity, you are not a leader. You can employ people's hands. In other words, you can, put people in employment, pay them. You can also employ their heads. In other words, what they know. But how many know that their hearts, they volunteer? And for the people to be able to volunteer their hearts, it takes good quality, diversity-sensitive leadership. There is a growing realization supported by concrete international evidence that people are a crucial resource in an organization's ability to transform themselves in facing up future reality. Diversity is beneficial in organizations. Why? Because it improves your perspectives and your views. When you do not have diversity in your organization, your perspective will be narrow. Why? Because it's limited to the thinking of the people who are from similar or same background, who can't add much value. Here is the historical perspective in South Africa. We're coming from a history of job reservation. Business rights were allowed to the oppressors, certain group of people. And also for us as black people to be in towns, we had to have what they call a pass. They call it a dome pass in Afrikaans. It actually means a stupid pass. It's a pass for stupid. Dome means you dumb. So it's a dumb pass. We used to use that to access the city of Pretoria. At certain times at night, you would not be found in the streets of any main city, unless if you have a letter from your boss. We're coming from a history of apartheid education. People were given, there were two separate educations. There was education for the elite, for the whites, and there was education for the blacks. Education for the white was it was more innovative, thinking type of stuff. And education for the blacks was called Bantu education. It was for the black people. And they train us on how to help those who are doing the thinking work. If you were to go to a construction site, you will find that there's Bascobas and Boy Johannes, because all men were called boys. It didn't matter how old you were. My father, if he was working in a garden of an oppressor, he would be called Boy Wilson. Apartheid education has made the black people to lag behind. And I'll show you why it doesn't make sense in a minute. There was forced segregation coming from the Groups Areas Act, where people have to stay in certain places by the act. And socio-economic circumstances were terrible. And here is the statement. You cannot take a person, after all these changes, the political freedom that we have, you cannot take a person that has been shackled in chains for a year, then you free him and bring him to the starting line of the race and tell him you are free to compete with the others and still think that you are totally fair. And that is why our government had to come with other acts to deal with those acts. It was H.F. Verwoerd, who used to be one of the presidents or prime ministers of our country, the old regime, who said, what is the use of teaching a Bantu child maths and science and not use it in practice? You rather teach them how to use a pick and a shovel because they will need that for the rest of their lives. So when we talk about dealing with diversity, the sensitivity in our country has to go to and address those issues, because you have got a bulk of people who are not employable because of an act which was passed in some parliament. This year is going to mark the first grade 12s after the political independence that we have. The new education system which is in place, those kids are the first group of kids in grade 12 are in class this year, which actually means that we have just started with our education. And as you know, education remains important. The quality of human resources must steadily be rising if nation's economy is to upgrade. And Michael Porter says, there is little doubt from our research that education and training are decisive in national competitive advantage. So we should realize that education, the World Bank continues to say, education is more important than ever before. In the past 30 years,